A long time ago, on a comics page far, far away. Greetings and welcome to May the Panel Be With You, the Star Wars comic book show brought to you by the Punch Up Entertainment Network. I am your humble host, Mike Gargoni, and joining me, as always, the Senator Greyshade to my Commander Strom, it's John Campbell.
Hello, everybody. Oh, man, we're back, and it's still the 70s, and ooh, it's funky, fun sci-fi.
Is this... Those are the words you're going to use to describe the beginning of our first big story arc? Funky fun? Because I agree, John.
I was going to say, this is pretty... I think funky is pretty right for the story arc. It is
I don't disagree.
Funky, my friends. Yeah, there's no doubt 'tis the 70s reading this.
But on the fashion alone, I can have disagreements with you. Some of the capes and collars going on in this book are off the rails.
It's something I love about Star Wars in general is even to this day, you're like, oh, this started in the 70s. You know, there's still elements of Star Wars that they just pull this. It's intrinsic to the DNA, right? Like it is the capes and collars and stuff that still is a part of it.
Well, we're slowly getting on an escape vector out of the 70s, though, because, yes, we are covering issue number 18 today of the Marvel Star Wars comic book from 1977, or at least this started in 1977. Issue number 18, which was originally published December 1st, 1978. So we're slowly creeping towards the end of the 70s here. We've got a lot of the same...
I was going to say ever creeping towards 1980, which is also when we get The Empire Strikes Back.
This is true, and we'll be covering that coverage in the comics as well. We've got a lot of the same creatives as we've had before. We have Archie Goodwin on writing. We've got Carmine Infantino on pencils. We've got Gene Day now on inks. We've got Janice Cohen on colors, and Rick Parker as the letterer, with a certain Mr. Shooter lurking in the background.
I just imagine it's always like he just kind of comes up over like a partition in the office, like, you should do this. He lowers back down.
I actually don't know where Jim Shooter's from. I want to assign him like a weird Jersey accent, but I don't know if that's where he is.
I have seen interviews with him. He does not. I think he has a pretty flat, standard American accent. He is an interesting looking guy. I will say.
Yeah, he's got these weird bulbous frog eyes and a black hood, and he only appears as a projected head.
I will say he's from Pittsburgh. So, you know, East Coast, but not this kind of East Coast, you know. I will say, he's very serious. As anytime I see him interviewed, he's always just kind of talking like this. He's all over, if you watch, if people are fans of the Netflix show The Toys That Made Us, because Marvel had so many of those licenses for those 80s toys. Yes. He was editor at that time, so he is frequently in those, and that's where I've seen him the most. And I think I'm always struck by how boring he is, because obviously the stories of him are he's this crazy guy who came in here with these insane ideas, and then you're like, oh, he's just kind of like a corporate suit.
Yeah,
right.
And I don't quite feel his fingertips on this book as much as I do in books that we would later read in the 80s. I'm looking at you, Secret Wars 2.
Well, I mean, eventually you get to when I believe he was the chief writer on that, right?
Yes, exactly. The Beyonder as self-insert.
I think it's very interesting about him. And welcome to Shootercast. But I was just gonna say, I think it's key that he's consulting editor. I think he it's not till the real early '80s that he really like makes his presence known. Dazzler was his baby. Well, that's the big Jim Shooter thing.
I've long said this show is not only covering the Star Wars comics of yesteryear. It is that, but it is also, I think, an interesting chart of the history of modern day comic books, right? Because starting in the late 70s is when we really start to think of comic books as their like modern era. We can like divvy it up into ages as like Bronze Age, but like modern comic book storytelling in terms of Marvel and DC and a lot of those other books, and later we'll get to the Dark Horse stuff, really starts to cement itself in the late 70s. enemies. So charting that is interesting.
Well, and I think something we'll see with Shooter. I'm just kind of skimming his stuff. A lot of Shooter stuff was once he does Secret Wars, that gives him like, well, I know how this is done.
Mm-hmm. And Secret Wars is 82, 83?
Yeah, it's somewhere. Where is that? Somewhere in that range, yeah. So we're a few years out from that, but it was sort of like once he did that, all of a sudden, then it was just like, I'm the guy who did Secret Wars.
Yeah,
so...
and that was the toy commercial, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing about it, though. Apparently, with and for better or worse, 82.
Mm-hmm.
For better or worse, he did change comic books. He created the crossover event, basically, and
I was just playing Marvel Midnight Suns the other day, and eventually you recruit Spider-Man as one of the heroes you can play as, and he's trying to explain the Venom symbiote, and that game does the weird, like, condensed comic book time thing. So, like, there's a one-sentence description of Secret Wars, and like how Spider-Man got the symbiote suit. And it's like, yeah, and I went to Battle World, and it was a whole thing, and I came back with an alien suit. Don't worry about it.
That's, you know what? Having read both Secret Wars, that's fine to just leave it at that.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
There's a lot of cool stuff in there, but there's also just a lot of other stuff. Now,
I think that's a perfect description
of
of the book we're reading today.
There's lots of stuff. I will say, as we enter this arc, I am fascinated to see. This feels like the most ambition we've seen from this comic so far, in terms of like, oh, we are going to try to actually add to the universe.
I think it feels like that. I think it also feels like they're actually analyzing the toys they have to play with in terms of storytelling, as opposed to making everything up whole cloth. Like, okay, we can have our planet of weird water world cargo cults and space pirates, and that seems pretty much like, okay, that could have been an episode of Flash Gordon. This storyline, or at least the first parts of it we're already read up with, do feel like something wholly within Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. That is true. It's just, it almost makes it weirder, right? Because you're like, oh, these things are Star Wars things that also just don't get picked up on.
They do and they don't, and we'll get into it, but like the story that develops here feels like a proto version of the whole Lando storyline in Empire Strikes Back, right?
Very much so. Very much so. I couldn't help but feel that, with sort of them taking refuge somewhere and it not being all it seems.
Yeah, exactly. But speaking of the Empire Striking Back, what do they have to do to strike back, John? Well, they have to strike first. So let's get to this cover.
Here it is. This is it. As it promises, Star Wars: The Empire Strikes.
Yeah.
So this is it. We caught up. The really innovative stuff, George Lucas there, because he started with the second strike when he made the movie. So this is going back. In some ways, this is the prequel. Yes, The Empire Strikes. And boy, things look bad here, because that appears to be a unconscious or dead Luke Skywalker.
I want to focus on this for a moment, and I will bring it up later in the book as well. There is no way in hell that 3PO can lift a full-sized human body.
No, you never see 3PO ever display any level of strength. And I mean even base human levels of strength.
Right. I would love to see 3PO try to hold open a door on a windy day.
That's it. Yeah. He's not built for that. Like, that's not the thing. Not all robots have inhuman strength. 3PO. So I also, opening this and looking at this cover, I was struck by, that's nuts to see.
There was recently, as of the recording of this, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 just came out a little while ago, and there was reporting about a scene in which Nebula is carrying an unconscious Peter Quill, and what they did is they built a full-sized replica of Chris Pratt, and it only weighed like 30-something pounds.
Yeah, 35 pounds. But it was all animatronic, and it could breathe and move. Like, it is creepy.
Yeah, so that was my first thought when I saw this cover, was just like, that's just a Luke Skywalker real doll that he's carrying there.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And look at these. Man, these stormtroopers have not had much to do, obviously, because these guns are shined and polished, man.
There's a term in the Clone Wars that the clone troopers give their new untested troopers, and that is shinies.
Yeah, that's
'Cause they-
very much what. Look at the glimmer on these guns.
Yeah, there's a little bit of J.J. Abrams like lens flares going on
There's
here.
some lens flare going on for sure, man. Yeah.
But yeah, one of the stormtroopers is saying, "There's the wounded rebel spy. Vaporize him and the droids." Also,
Oh no.
bold of them to assume the gender of a droid, but anyway.
That's yes. Well, I mean that is, but the scratching the surface of all the weird shit about droids.
That's
in Star
fair.
Wars.
Yes.
That is sometimes better not to put too much thought to, or else you'll realize how monstrous every character in Star Wars is.
It's true. Yeah, that's like the one big glaring thing in Star Wars. Just like, if you
Yeah.
think too hard about the droids, everyone's terrible.
Right, because you're like, wait, is this a slave race?
Kinda.
Feels like it's a slave race.
Right. But we got, primarily we have Infantino back as our primary penciler, who we've not had for the last couple of issues.
Yeah, and he is back with a vengeance, baby.
Yeah. We talk about weird faces and how angular they are. We talk about how weird people are holding guns. We'll be pointing out a lot of that this issue.
Yes, there's so much weird holding of guns in this.
If we get into the first page here, yes, the Empire strikes. We've got our list of people on the credits there, but we've also got a rainbow exhaust of the Millennium Falcon. I actually love the art on this page.
It's the very 70s thing, man. This looks like the poster that was on a kid's bedroom in the 70s, man, right? It's total psychedelic Star Wars.
This is a t-shirt that I want.
Definitely, yeah. And lots of I love a very comic book hyperspace.
I think Archie Goodwin is really settling into his voice as a narrator at this point. We talked last issue about Claremont, right? And how he has influenced the comic book industry at this time in terms of how popular he is and how he writes and how not everyone can really be on his level.
We've talked about Roy Thomas's attempts to be Claremont, and they just don't land the same way. You know, it is. That's always the thing with him, right? Is it didn't feel like, obviously he wasn't trying to be Claremont, he just was Claremont. So there isn't the same like, what are you doing, man? You're trying to show off here. I feel like Archie Goodwin really strikes a nice balance of, he's descriptive. There's a little bit more than just base narration, but he never overindulges or is trying to show off with big words and things like that.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think he is doing a heavy enough touch that he's making his voice known in a way that like some writers would maybe go a little too far. Cough, Roy Thomas, cough. But he knows when to hold back because he knows his strengths and his weaknesses, or at least he's settling into that.
I will say the book just reads moment to moment so much better under his scripts than Roy Thomas's. Like it just in general, we've talked about, it feels more like Star Wars, but it also just moves along better. Carmine Infantino is an absolute legend, but I will say his art is where the book kind of stays weird, because the just basic plot of this, pretty good if not remarkable Star Wars.
Let's get into it, because we come in with these captions. All aboard the smuggling ship are tired. A multitude of adventures lie behind them. Each has taken its toll. It's a time of great vulnerability. And suddenly, we have 3PO shouting, "Princess Leia, Captain Solo, come quickly. Something has happened to Master Luke." And that's a good first page. It encourages you to turn the page, look at what's coming next.
That's always the great Brian K. Vaughan, who said the end of every page should make the reader need to go to the next page.
Absolutely. And go to the next page we will, and right into Infantino's art that you have a problem with.
I do, and I have more of a problem with it seeing other artists do it, because we've had some fill-ins and stuff like that, and then back to it, you just realize it's very harsh. And it's very... Infantino, was a artist for a long time in comics, and I will say, I do feel like this is... It's key not just with his, because you go back to like his Silver Age stuff, it's not this harsh, obviously, but this is very much post Neil Adams, which I think is very key. We're right in the middle of Neil Adams is redefined, and that's what this feels like to me, where it's like, no, more detail.
For listeners and viewers who maybe don't have the same level of comic book history as Neil Adams at this time was a prolific, I think is not too hard to say.
Yeah, I mean, prolific is yeah, for sure. But I mean, just in general, like when he comes on the scene, it's like a bomb goes off, and you can look at the sort of the pre and post Neil Adams and comic book art, right? Is like he was the first guy to really go at like, no, I'm going to try to be more realistic. I'm going to try to be more. It's still stylized, I mean, obviously it's gotten even more so. But he really leaned into shadows and harsh lines and, capturing the contours of a face and stuff like that.
Sure. And before that, you had your Jack Kirby's that was definitely leaning on more of a cartoonist's style, right?
Right. Yeah, that sort of thing. But I think what's interesting is this is Infantino, who is kind of more of a Silver Age, he did a lot of like Silver Age DC stuff like Flash and things like that. A lot of the iconic Flash imagery you've seen around is Infantino stuff. Mm-hmm. The two Flashes racing to save the woman. Things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this feels like Infantino going like, ooh, let me get modern. And so I think what I'm reacting to is a guy who this is not his natural inclination as an artist, maybe.
Well, and we can't dismiss the fact that I think a lot of this can be put at the feet of the inker as well, because I don't know what the original like line work of this book even looks like without the inks. You look at Chewbacca on this top panel here, and so much of the definition here is done through the inking and the shading.
I have a huge problem with the portrayal of Chewbacca throughout this whole comic, basically.
Because he looks like Sasquatch?
Yeah, because Chewbacca is very
specifically
furry,
from the Jack Link's commercial, Sasquatch.
Yes, exactly. He's very furry, but he's not furry in this. He's hairy, and that's different. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like you don't. They really want to. They're almost like concerned that you won't be aware of that he has fur on him, so they really exaggerate how long the fur is. It's almost like. No, he'll just read as like a brown-colored guy. We got to make sure we really get the long fur. So you get these long strands, and this feels like a Chewie who's unkempt. And then, on top of that, the weird, the coloring of his face and hands that gives him the ape-like sort of things, which is, Chewie is meant to be very dog-like, not ape-like. And that's the thing that, you're losing a lot of the, Chewie, I love you, but for the cuddliness that's there in Chewie he's a much harsher looking character in this. He's not as lovable here.
Yeah.
As much as I always love him.
The interesting distinction, especially in the face specifically, because in the Chewbacca face, you never really lose the fur, right? The hair. It basically covers the whole face, except for the little wet dog nose, like you say.
Right,
Whereas this really does the apish thing where they frame the face with bare skin around the eyes and the nose and the mouth. It gives it a very, more apish, Sasquatchian look as opposed to Chewbacca, which is a little bit more dog-like.
Yeah, because Chewbacca, for those who don't know the history of Star Wars, is based on George Lucas's Alaskan Malamute, who would sit in the passenger seat of his car. By the way, his dog's name, Indiana. By the way, I mean, you start to learn anything about George Lucas's life, you're like, oh, he just took everything comes from his life. But yeah, he had this big furry dog that would sit in the passenger seat of his car next to him, and that was the image of Han and Chewie. So here it is like this weird. It just makes him seem more alien and less approachable, and I don't like that.
Yeah, I think the hands are also another big thing. If you
They're very ape-like.
They're very ape-like. They're very like bare, no hair on them. Whereas you look at Chewbacca just in motion in the movies, you almost like can't even tell where his fingers are sometimes, because there is just like a lot of hair going on there. Because that is the thing. You look at pictures of Chewbacca, he does have a lot of hair, but this makes it look like it is more like individual strands assigned as opposed to like a big hairy dude.
He's got a furry coat, like a sort of thing, as opposed to Yeah, here, like I said, he looks unkempt, and that's not how Chewbacca looks.
For those who aren't watching on YouTube, I recommend doing a quick Google search of the like Krampus festivals they do in Eastern Europe, and there are these big hairy
Yeah.
suits that people wear, and they like move in a disturbing way because they've got these long strands of hair built into them, so that they move in like weird, disturbing, floofy ways. And this is what the Chewbacca we're dealing with here kind of looks like.
And that's what so I'm also looking at, just for comparison's sake, because I'm curious about. I'm looking at some of the images of him from the new Han Solo and Chewbacca series. It's going now, and it's just interesting to see how they do it is about the inking, a lot of it, right? Which is, it is the definition of, it's just the fur is more like layers of fur, whereas here they're really defining like each strand of it.
Yeah. So I guess going forward, that is all of our commentary on Chewbacca, and we're going to be dealing with this version of Chewbacca for a while until Infantino is basically off the book. So just know that, like, take it as rote that we have problems with how Chewbacca is portrayed in a lot of these issues.
Because I have a lot of opinions about Chewbacca, you know.
I mean, we do, and like that's
He's
the thing.
such a key, like, fan favorite. You know, he is such a mascot of Star Wars, right? Like 3PO, Chewie. These are kind of the characters that, even if you don't know Star Wars, you're like, oh yeah, that's Star Wars.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously, again, we have to state this is only having the first movie as context.
Correct.
So, like, a lot of the more lovable moments of Chewbacca have not happened yet.
Right. We don't have yet generations like you and I, where I had a Chewbacca toy and poster on my wall, and have, you know, Chewbacca's been with me my whole life, you know, so.
We one of the key scenes, I think, that really characterizes Chewbacca is in Empire Strikes Back, when he's sadly putting 3PO back together, right?
Yep. Yeah.
And I think that really does more to the characterization of Chewbacca than anything that was in A New Hope. So right now we're dealing with a big angry wood ape that is also hanging out with Han Solo and Leia.
Yeah. And also, just, I mean, I don't think there's a lot of focus on portraying him as much more than just big and scary at this point, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Just in the writing, even. All right,
and
so
that was our 20-minute diatribe on Chewbacca.
there you go. Then welcome to Chewbacca Cast. So I love Han's hot pink and blue chair. That's an interesting coloring choice.
Yeah, we're back to funky 70s coloring backgrounds, which is like, just pick a color and throw it on the background.
It really is just like, hey man, color, color, color.
They've got Hulk colors in the background. It's all greens and purples and pinks.
Yeah, it's wild. So yes, 3PO is very concerned. He goes, I need everybody to come here because Master Luke, as he says in the parlance of droids, has shut down.
I thought this was very cute. The idea that, like, for some reason 3PO can't parse what's happening to Luke, so he just resorts to what would be the droid equivalent. He's shut down. Like, I like 3PO would know if he had died, and he's not dead.
Yes, right. I also like his use of the term, but to my photocell receptors. Not eyes, they are photocell receptors.
I mean, technically he doesn't have eyes.
This is true, yeah. It's just like, and they've laid him out once again on the very 70s pink couch on the Millennium Falcon.
I do love the freep doot from
Yeah.
R2 here.
And there's I will say one thing I think Goodwin really is good at is capturing the bickering banter of 3PO and R2. He's got a lot of that, and he has before, and that is key to the comedy of Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. We go to the next page, and Luke is laid out on the floor. Leia's like, what the hell happened? Bring the med pack. And they're trying to figure out what's wrong with Luke, and they can't figure it out until R2 comes in and says, hey, he was doing something Jedi stuff, and he asked us to record it. And R2's got it all recorded. So it gives us a diegetic flashback, which I actually really liked.
Yeah, this is interesting. Like the idea about, like, well, play back the tape, R2.
Yeah, so like R2 was recording, so when we flash back at the bottom of this page and we get all of this, it's from R2's point of view, I guess?
Yeah. Is on the, in the moments, the little droid's recording is on the Falcon's communicator screen is interesting. But yeah, he's basically playing back the tape of what happened from him using R2 as a camera. And then can we turn the page and talk about very interesting, because it will be his future career when Luke Skywalker turns into the Joker on this first panel.
Well, I do want to address the helmet on the last page that Luke is
That
training
is not
helmet.
the helmet from the movie.
No, but it is the helmet from the adaptation of the movie that we saw in the first 6 issues.
They have stuck with this where it's just like a bucket on his head.
But yeah, in the next page we get to Infantino just with his crazy eyebrows. And yes, he looks like Jack Nicholson's the Joker.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, the one panel guest star, Mr. Jack Nicholson. Ben Kenobi.
I like that. That's we both went for it.
Keep taping R2. Wait till they get a load of me.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then immediately the and this is very psychedelic when all of a sudden it's just the colored dots around him.
Yeah, I thought we were about to break out into Yellow Submarine for a second.
It does have that like 70s variety show feel. Like this is how he would start his pop song. It's like a Jedi Knight, not long beyond, you know.
Luke, be a Jedi tonight.
It does that, but it seems like it's like, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Luke Skywalker, and then it would pan over to this, and he's doing the thing as the music starts.
And Luke being like, thanks everybody for being here. I'd like to thank Burt Baccarat on piano.
We had a lot of fun tonight with our guests Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise. Yeah, Dean Martin in a tuxedo just threw to him on the stage here.
Joking aside, I do like this stuff because Luke is all in his head because Obi-Wan has just died. This is his first moment to like kind of recover since the events of the end of A New Hope, and so he's trying to like open himself up to the Force, and something goes wrong. I love this as a hook for Jedi stuff.
It's good. It's also yet another reason to just keep Luke out of this book, basically.
I mean, yeah.
And this is truly insane Infantino art. This 3-panel thing of him trying to connect with the Force.
I had such trouble parsing what was going on at the bottom of the far left panel in the center here until I realized those are his knees just under his chin and his thumbs over his knee. Like, what's going on here in terms of his body formation makes no sense to me.
Infantino's like the positions people's bodies are in are always nuts.
If
He's a real
hold your thumb up against your knee really quick and look at the scale.
Yeah, it's
Luke's
wrong.
hands in this panel are gigantic.
They are gigantic. 'Cause the other thing is, where are his fingers? There's not that much space. If you put your like that, it doesn't work.
Or his legs have shrunk indomitably, which maybe they have based on the top right panel. Like his legs are like flat.
Well,
basically
he's brought them completely up against his chest, which just isn't possible because there's a shape to them. This is all wrong. This is all wrong. It's so weird. And then he just looks completely insane in that last. No.
His pupils are white. He's screaming. He's grown a black mustache for some reason.
Luke, you didn't eat those mushrooms in the back of the ship, did you?
Chewie and I were saving those.
Oh, no, we were running those for somebody. Uh-oh.
But yeah, the idea is that like Luke tried to open himself up to the Force. He got some kind of vision or some kind of connection went wrong, and now it has completely shut his body down for some reason.
It's a cool idea. It is a cool idea. I mean, I do like especially if this is between New Hope and Empire. So the idea that we're seeing the sort of trepidatious failures and early first starts of Luke trying to embrace the Force because he's still, he doesn't have Obi-Wan to guide him. So,
right.
I like this idea.
And look, they go into this in a lot of detail in Charles Soule's ongoing that happens in between A New Hope and Empire.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's sort of the thing, right? Is like the Charles Soule stuff and the Jason Aaron stuff has, you know, the benefit, right, of being able to do a much more polished and detailed version of this because it has all the movies to look back on.
Right, so obviously they have the benefit of knowing that Luke would go and fight in a gladiatorial arena for a Hutt with amazing abs. We'll never forget Gracchus the Hutt.
Never. How could you?
That Hutt has amazing abs. He's shredded.
Yeah, you know what? I do like that there are different body types of Hutts. That's all I'm saying.
So on the next page,
right.
we have to figure out what's going on with Luke. How can we get him to a medical facility? There's nowhere around that isn't also loyal to the Empire.
And just the craziest Infantino expressions on Han and Leia throughout this whole page.
You know what really bugged me the most about... This is just turning into Let's Rag on Infantino cast.
Legendary, very dead comic book artist Carmine Infantino.
How long and pointy Leia's fingers are consistently bugged the crap out of me.
Well, there's a lot. Something in general, all of his art is very harsh lines, which means all of the body parts as well. Everything is very pointed and jagged. There's not the rounded sense of a human body. So everything is pointy, jaggy, and just it's very harsh.
Yeah.
Harsh lines. And
everyone's
huge hands.
crazy eyebrows.
Look at this in the second panel here. Han's gigantic fingers on that door.
I'm looking at Leia's like spidery fingers in the third panel, like wrapping all the way around a chair, like some kind of horror monster.
I know, it's just like Leia really is drawn like a villain in this, and Han. I mean, Han looks straight up like a stroke victim, really, legitimately, in that third.
I shouldn't be laughing.
But it's true. I mean, literally, like, the proportions of his face are wrong, and the left side of his face is slivering off.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
And there's just this weird canted angle that just has the one Chewie eye over in the corner, like,
And again, yeah. We can rag on Infantino's art all day.
Yeah.
The point is we're trying to figure out where to go. Han has some idea.
Yeah. Hey, come on. I got an idea because nobody's
it's going to be like a smuggler
spice
idea, and Leia's not huge on that.
You never forget he's a criminal, all right? I mean, Han ran drugs. Let's you know.
Let's be real.
He does a lot. Yeah, but let's be honest here. Han Solo, drug smuggler.
Right. I mean, he just says like a spice smuggler, and spice is one of the bigger drugs in the Star Wars universe.
Oh yeah.
Again, none of that is established yet, but they ain't running that shit out of Kessel because it is good for the health and well-being of the galaxy.
And also, George Lucas never heard of a book by Frank Herbert, man. What are you talking about?
Oh yeah.
What?
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know what that is.
Desert Planet and Spice. Yeah, never heard of it.
Yeah. I always love the Frank Herbert thing of, I could sue if I wanted to. I just don't want to.
Look, he was
but that I could.
He was a beneficent libertarian, that Frank Herbert.
Yeah. But I totally could, baby. Never forget. Don't step out of line, Lucas. All right. So, yes, they are immediately... though. They drop out of light speed, and it's the cops.
Yeah.
This is the most cop TIE fighter pilot I've ever seen.
Attention, freighter, attention. You are making unauthorized entry into a military containment zone of the Empire. Prepare for immediate boarding and full inspection.
Yeah, we got a 41-2 down here on the Space Sector 8. Calling for backup.
I find it interesting that this just like random patrol TIE fighter is a TIE Advanced.
I know. I also thought that was very strange.
Again,
it seems like kind of a waste.
We have very little context for like the differences in TIE fighters.
They just have design, so they're just throwing stuff in that looks interesting.
But the fact that in the first movie, the only person we see flying the TIE Advanced is Darth Vader, which makes it cool and different.
Yeah, man. Just based on the first movie, we thought that was just like, he just has his own thing. Like that's just Vader's thing.
And obviously we'd get that perfected as the TIE Interceptor later, but
Oh God, so badass. But yeah, and so, but I just love the idea of. I don't think I've ever just seen a like, please pull over to the side of the road. And Han is really mad about this, so much so that he is abusing the Millennium Falcon on this next page.
Yeah, he slams on the console. I'm sure L3 is not feeling great about that.
Goddamn Auto Navigator, which they did establish earlier, had been drifting, and he did not compensate for that.
Right. So
This
rather
is a real
than
your dad on a road trip energy from Han. God
the map
damn
said
it.
turn right.
I'm not going to ask for directions. I know where I am. We're not lost.
Yeah. I do love Leia's line here when Han says, "We're in the right quadrant, but the wrong sector." And Leia responds, "I'd hate to think something that stupid might become my epitaph."
Yeah, I mean, once again, I do think Goodwin has a pretty good handle on the voices of these characters.
Yeah, no, the banter with Leia and Solo, I think, is very good. Your worshipfulness, your royalness, like those kind of like quips from Han are constant, and Leia being like, "Oh my God, you're so dumb."
The only problem is then when matched with the Infantino art, they seem really mean. They're not like a banter. They're like a, you fucking dummy.
You dumb space pirate.
Don't you tell me, you self-entitled lady. I swear to God, I will.
Thankfully, Han Solo has a great solution to being pulled over by the cops, and that is blow up the cop car.
He just kills him. He just destroys this guy.
I mean, it's an imp. Who cares?
Whatever. Yeah, I mean, but I do that. You know what, though? That's very in character. He goes like, "Oh, I know I handled this." Kapow!
But then, like, Leia's quick rejoinder is just like, "Well, that's really wonderful. Except when that TIE fighter doesn't check in, and every Imperial craft in the zone will be looking for him. And us, you idiot."
But he's like, honey, we're going to speed the hell out of here. Don't you worry. And then, all right, let's turn to this next page, because the hell am I looking at here?
You're looking at the wreckage of the USVC Nostromo.
That's kind of what I'm getting at. Is this does not feel like a Star Wars ship.
Yeah, I think the Weyland-Yutani Corporation has lost one of their merchant vessels.
It does feel like that. Yes, it is. I just turned this page. I went, "Whoa, that's out of another franchise." Because this is pretty crazy. This and this sets into motion. It carries the House of Tag markings.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk about this a little bit.
I figured you might. Yeah.
And it's really interesting because I just started reading the newest Dr. Aphra series that started up a couple of years ago.
Okay, yeah.
And
I haven't read the newest one, yeah.
The House of Tag is actually very important at the beginning of that series as well. Because it's a thing that is prevalent throughout a lot of Star Wars Expanded Universe stuff. And honestly, I'm trying to track where it starts, and I think it's here.
I think it's got to be. I mean, because there's almost nothing else it could be from, right? I mean, there's not a lot. I mean, what do we have at this point? The movie and Splinter the Mind's Eye?
Pretty much. So, from A New Hope, we have the... I don't know what his exact rank was on the Death Star at that time, but Colonel, maybe? Tag? Commander Tag?
That's in my memory, it's Colonel, yeah.
But leastways, he is on the Death Star in A New Hope as, like, one of the guys being like, "Nothing will stop this battle station." And Vader going, "I find your lack of faith disturbing," chokes him out a little bit.
Iconic, yeah.
Yeah. Having... His name is never said in the movie. I think his name is said in a deleted scene, and that's about it.
I think that is. And boy, that was an early case of that being the case for almost anything in Star Wars. Well, their name isn't said in the thing, but...
Right. But the House of Tag becomes this whole thing as a, like, bourgeois kind of, like, incredibly influential and filthy rich group of dynastic old money in the Empire
Yeah.
that is like a thing throughout the expanded universe. And honestly, it starts here with the House of Tag mentioning in this comic book. And
I do like the idea of it. I like the sort of aristocratic, bourgeois nature of like, oh, they're a family with influence in this world.
Yeah, and that is kind of their whole thing. Is like, if you need a rich asshole in Star Wars, why not make him a Tag?
Yeah, but it's like that is a thing that I think one of the things that particularly and you know, alarm bells are going off but like something I know the complaints specifically about things like the sequels are the world feels really small when it feels like everyone's a Skywalker or a Palpatine now, right? So I do like things like House of Tag because it makes the world feels like, oh, there's like a whole family with lineage that's part of this universe and stuff like this. Later, we'll get to another aspect of this I like when we get to the casino, and it's like, oh, here's like another thing that is sort of like in the middle of stuff where it's like, we're going to be cool with the Empire, but not exactly there, and just sort of let it slide. I always love when one of my favorite things I'll say a nice thing about the sea, one of my favorite things in Last Jedi is when they get on the weapons dealer ship and they go, oh, he's selling TIE fighters and X-Wings, because there are also just people who aren't on either side and just going, I'll just profit off the war. Like, I just like things that make the world feel bigger like that. And so this idea that like, oh yeah, there's like a family with its own lineage that is seeded through all this stuff too, that has anything to do with our main characters necessarily.
Right, and one of their characters just happens to be a Nepo baby who became a general in the Empire.
Right. Yeah, that further adds to, and also that's so perfect for that like table of fancy influential guys, is a guy who's just here because he's a Tag. Mm-hmm. And he's the guy that everybody is like
Vader chokes out.
And you know, people are like, hey, you know that douchebag Tag? Vader totally choked him out in a meeting, you know, like that kind of stuff that I just like. I like the world feeling alive on the fringes of the story. So I do like that, but I didn't know they had such crazy looking ships. And
actually, no, it was, sorry, I always confuse Modi and Tag. Modi's the one who gets choked out. Tag is the one who's arguing with him.
Yeah. Oh, that makes sense then.
Both of them unnamed in the movie, but they're the two who are like arguing back and forth, and then Vader comes in and is like, shut the fuck up.
I mean, it is like you always confuse them because they might as well be the same guy. Like that table of people is all meant to just sort of be a singular entity, kind of, right? They're all
in the expanded universe, General Tag specifically usually survives the Death Star. Like, he gets off before it blows up. And that's a big thing later in the more recent Marvel comics as well, as Tag is still around after the explosion of the Death Star.
That is where I feel like I've encountered him the most, is in the comics of late. So they find this and they're like, oh man, it's a destroyed House of Tag ship. That's gonna be bad. And they find a guy in the wreckage in rebel armor,
whatever that means.
Yeah, it's like, oh god, talk about a messed up. Look at Chewie's hand on the second to last panel here.
Yeah, he's got a weird,
it's a straight up monster
claw.
hand.
He's got exactly what would be labeled as Monster Hand in Party City for like big rubber gloves.
Yeah, exactly. I don't see any official logo on this. It just says Monster Hand. And it's free. No,
I do like that they call the guy they find a floater. I found that a little like funny and gross.
We got a floater. Yeah, it's just like, oh man, the implication there's a term for it, because that is always the thing. It's like, yeah, there'd be bodies in that wreckage, man.
Yeah, and this is the thing. They find this derelict ship. It's a merchant ship, not associated with the Rebellion or the Empire, but it definitely seems to them like the Empire blew this up, except they find a guy in Rebel armor. And so on the next page, they bring this guy inside, and it seems like the Empire blew up this ship, but scattered evidence to make it seem like the Rebels did it inside this, like, Imperial containment zone.
Which I do like the idea about, just like, well, they're not being enough of terrorists for us to warrant this, so let's do some stuff. Yeah, I mean,
no, and that's why we say, like, when this is like a cool Star Wars story hook, like, this is totally like a shitty thing the Empire would do, right? It's like doing a false flag operation to gin up support against the Rebellion, even when the Rebellion's not being this big of an asshole.
Right. I mean, we're, very real world. We're seeing that right now. There's stuff in over in Russia that's been like this, right? Where it's
100%.
like, I think you might have blown up your own thing there, pal.
Right.
No.
We get a brief conversation with Beardy McBeardface, this rebel they pull on board.
Oh, God. Yeah.
And he gives them the down low of just like, they wanted it to look like a rebel raid. We were prisoners taken during fighting in another system. We were brought here and we were just thrown out into space. It's like, wow, that's some evil Empire shit right there.
That is really messed up. Yeah, that is very disturbing concept. And so they're like, this is really bad. Like, because also the other thing about this that's interesting, and they don't bring this up specifically, but it is sort of a thing, right, is this kind of could undo some of the Death Star victory, right?
Yeah, if you suddenly turn around and...
If it looks like they're just blowing up random shit for no reason.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's always been a fun thing to play with the Empire in terms of telling stories set in this period of Star Wars, is how does the Empire spin itself as being a good thing? Because objectively, from a viewer's point of view, Empire bad. But how do all of the citizens who exist within that universe justify their existence under a guy who is clearly an evil-robed Sith wizard as the Emperor?
I know, it just it does seem like when the guy's like, does he do addresses where he's like, "My people," and you're just like, yeah, that's my guy right there.
We recently in Bad Batch had a scene that took place in the Senate where the Emperor addresses the Senate and saying, "And now begins the age of the Imperial Stormtrooper," and it's like, wow, that's evil.
And it is one of those things where you go like, and people are like, "Yeah, man, yeah, all right."
Well, because
Palpatine forever.
In the context of that show, it's become like a really, really poignant. One of the themes of the show is about how veterans are discarded after they're used up, and like that's the whole like arc of the show.
Right.
Is like how the clones are discarded after the Clone Wars.
Yeah, definitely, but it's just like, yeah, I'm a Palpatine voter,
right?
Yeah, I can't talk to my dad anymore. He voted for Palpatine. I just really liked his tax policy. That's all it is. I'm not on board.
The Empire's about law and order and security, and how can you not support that?
We can't have these rebels running around, man. That's crime.
Anyway, speaking of crime, we suddenly have a light cruiser show up, and this is even bigger cops. Attention, freighter. Your presence here places you under a suspicion of piracy and or acts of rebellion. Heave to instantly, or we will open fire.
I do love it. At some point, they hit on the term rebel, and so it is like, oh shit, we're gonna charge this guy with acts of rebellion. That's right.
I just like that they use the term heave to, which is a sailing term.
Heave to, yeah, that is heave to, which is the pull over to the side of the road, pal.
In space.
You better slow that ship down, man. We clocked you doing 90 out here.
But thankfully, the Falcon still has a few tricks left in her sweetheart and is starting to fly away.
Oh, it wooms out of there.
Mm-hmm. I do love a good womb.
Yeah. And then, ladies and gentlemen, Kojak himself, Telly Savalas, joins the cast.
Commander Strom.
Yeah.
Who is our Imperial commander aboard this light Star Destroyer.
As we were talking about, here's a new villain for this comic that actually feels of the universe. It's not a Crimson Jack or some totally insane Flash Gordon ripoff or something like that, you know? It's like, oh no, it's just... I mean, Star Wars has been... A lot of the expanded universe and stuff is that, right? It's just like, no, there's like a lot of Imperial bad guys around.
Yeah, like, look, you always need a stuffy space Nazi in a uniform to say, open fire!
Of course, man. And, I mean, you know, the Empire's gigantic. There'd be a million of these guys.
100%. And every single Star Wars movie has given us one of these stuffed shirts that says "Open Fire." And giving that guy a little bit more character and making him more of a bad guy is something that Star Wars comics have done, honestly, since right now, the issue we're reading.
The thing that's great about it is this guy is just one of a whole mass of people within the Empire. But for right now, he is the antagonist against our heroes. Right. So at the moment, he is a real deal main villain, when in reality, he's like middle management.
Right, exactly. He is in charge of this little small sector of space, but because he is the king of his own little anthill, he feels like the most evil person present in that moment.
And it's the same. It's the thing I love on Andor, right? Is like what happens is when somebody like this comes through, then it becomes just like, oh no, I'm more determined to get this guy than maybe other upper brass because he came to my sector and caused shit. Yeah, I think that's all I also like about that.
Because on the next page, we have them flying away, but Commander Strom is like, we've got TIE fighters out here. They're in a detention zone. We're going to get these assholes. But turns out it's Han Solo, motherfuckers.
Yeah. That's, by the way, that's the title of my rejected expanded universe novel. It's Han Solo, motherfuckers. They said, no, you can't.
I'd watch that.
Oh yeah. Disney. I do like the growling of the TIE fighter because they do kind of growl.
Yeah.
I always like that the ships of the Empire sound evil.
I also like that Han calls out, like, these are these new improved TIE fighters that apparently this guy's got a bunch of the Vader ones.
Oh god, they got the new batch.
They got the Ferrari of TIE fighters.
Yeah, it is. Crap. Oh, you haven't seen these? They're the new models. I was just reading about them.
We do have a little bit of, like, comic book time slowing down when the guy aboard the Star Destroyer bridge has time to say, that freighter's maneuvering like a fighter, Commander Strom, and it's left the TIE fighters firing at each other.
Yeah, that guy's face is insane, too.
Yeah. What's going on with his jaw? Like, where does it stop?
His face, it feels like somebody took a human face and stretched it out. Like it's just
Plastic Man,
It terrifying and not on purpose. So yeah, Han Solo is loving it based on that image in the last panel. Oh, yeah.
Oh, I mean, Han Solo always loves goofing on some people who are trying to get the better of him.
But here we go, folks. We just left the Nostromo, and now we've entered Stanley Kubrick's 2001.
I mean, for real, because, like, their destination is inside, and it turns out their destination is the wheel.
They worked so hard on that name.
I love simple, like, elegant names for, like, big, impressive things. Like, one of my favorite examples is the giant space station that Sword has in Marvel, just called The Peak.
Yeah.
I think there is an elegance to that.
Yeah. Sure, yeah.
So, yeah, no. Did they work hard on it? No. It's a big thing that looks like a wheel, and they called it the wheel. But the fact that it is the thing that you can just call the wheel, and people know what you're talking about, kind of, like, helps improve the gravitas of the situation sometimes.
And this is like a community, basically. It's like a floating city, right?
I mean, we'll get into exactly what the wheel is, but it's a lot of things. Mostly, it is Tortuga. It is like the place you can go in the galaxy where everything is legal. It's all kind of centered around betting and odds making and gambling of one stripe or another. But it is like a place where if you get in the hole, you're never getting out alive.
Right. And yes, exactly. And the Empire just kind of is like cool with it because they like get their cut or whatever, sort of the the attitude.
I do love the caption here along with the art because it does look like something out of 2001. And the caption says, its size makes it appear closer than it is, but the wheel's reputation does not rest on its size. There are other constructions in the galaxy larger, more awesome. The wheel is a monument to pleasure to risk, to greed, and to those with the need or the desperation. It also is a monument to life and death.
I mean, the thing that I like about this versus the weird Nostromo-looking House of Tag thing is they make a point of going, this is an oddity within Star Wars. This doesn't look like a Star Wars structure, and they're going, yeah, it is this weird thing that's its own unique entity.
Yeah, no, and I personally really like it. And we'll get into more of what's in there in later issues, because right now we just have the Millennium Falcon flying in. Meanwhile, Leia's going, my father fought the building of this place when he was a senator. It is degrading, it's barbaric, and Han cuts in.
He says, it's the ultimate gambling palace, princess. The stakes are high, but most galactic citizens wouldn't have it any other way. I do sort of like the idea of, like, from her perspective, this place is awful, and then scoundrel Han Solo's like, oh yeah, it's pretty sweet.
And this is why I think we're, like, setting up a good Star Wars story, because we're getting that dichotomy of something that made Star Wars so unique to begin with, which is this lived-in, kind of dirty space setting that really wasn't a thing prior to Star Wars, or at least not as, like, done as polished, right?
Right. I also love the idea of Bail Organa being like, you can't build that, man. That's messed up. We can't have that here, okay? We just can't.
In this neighborhood?
Yeah.
What will the HOA say?
We got kids here. You want to build it where? That's right near a school.
Unfortunately, we're going to find out exactly, like, the legitimacy of this place, because, yeah, we have our TIE fighter pilots being like, Commander Strom, he called home free. He got to base. We're not allowed to tag him anymore.
I do like that idea that it is just sort of like a no man's land, and there's just like, we specifically said we wouldn't send stormtroopers in there, man. Like, it's
they call it
whatever
the Wheels immunity sphere. This is where the Empire doesn't touch.
This is international waters, man.
Basically.
I do like Han just speeding into this thing, and the guy's like, oh, excuse me, you can't park here. This is a reserved bay.
Though Commander Strom's, like, response is basically setting up what's going to be one of the big conflicts going forward, which is the Wheels Sanctuary is courtesy of the Empire. As the Empire's chief representative in the sector, we withdraw that courtesy.
Yeah, he's basically just unilaterally going like, no, man, screw them. I'm sending people in. Yeah, and if they don't like it, tough.
Mm-hmm. What are you going to do? Fight the Empire?
Yeah.
What are you going to do? Rebel? Who does that?
Yeah. You know how we feel about rebellions. I think we've made it pretty clear.
So they fly in, and we've got this guy saying, hey, you can't park here. This is a reserved docking bay. Get out of here. Meanwhile, Han's like, screw it. We got to park.
On top of all the other crimes, Han's got a ticket for a no parking zone.
As we all know, John, a parking ticket isn't necessarily a violation of done something wrong. It's just how much you're willing to pay to park there.
Exactly. So they speed in here. The guy died. The rebel guy they found, he didn't
Beardy
make it.
McBeardface died.
And Han's like, whatever, he's not in the opening titles. Come on.
He didn't even have a character name. Of course he died.
And so they rush off. And I guess the idea is they're just going to get lost in the hustle and bustle of the wheel, right?
Well, specifically, also, they're splitting up. Chewie's taking the dead body to go hide the dead body. Han and Leia are just going to go hide. Meanwhile, the droids need to take Luke's unconscious body to try to find the hospital.
Yes. I do like the idea of, like, they already got me on a parking infraction. They can't find a body on this ship. And I can't explain that shit.
Specifically, Han is like, look, Leia, you're the leader of the rebellion. We need to get you out of here because there's no end of people who will sell you out on this space station.
It's a real... I've got to bust out a Barney Stinson line for Han here. You're making me the voice of reason, and that is not a good look on me.
Exactly.
That is sort of thing. It was like, oh, all of a sudden Han's making sense. That's not good for anybody.
Yeah. The caption at the bottom of the page is even, though it's hard to admit, Leia Organa find Han Solo's words make sense, and that is terrifying.
I also love the idea that she is just so used to anything that comes out of that guy's mouth is like, nah, that's wrong. It can't be. No, my instinct is just to go, you idiot. So they rush out here. Let's go to the next page and talk about, oh man, I want to talk about some handling of guns here, because this, number one, the body of this stormtrooper, and two, the way he is holding this gun to this guy's head is nuts.
Okay, so for those who aren't watching along with us at home, on the right side of this panel, we have a guy who has... we have a stormtrooper who has the docking administrator in a chokehold with one arm.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, he is holding the gun out in front of him so that the gun is pointed at the guy he has a chokehold on, but the gun is also pointed through the guy he has a chokehold on back at himself, which is maybe the worst way to hold a gun to somebody's head.
He's not holding it like up against the side of his head. He's holding it like this.
Towards the front of his face, yeah.
Yeah, like he's turned his arm around it so that he's pointing it. It is insane, and I have no idea why you would draw this like that. It's just so weird.
Before I could get a grip on the perspective here, I thought it was just a very tiny gun.
This was I lost my rifle, so this is my backup that I keep in an ankle holster.
This is my Derringer blaster.
This is should anyone accuse me of cheating at cards gun. God, it's so weird.
So yeah, we have stormtroopers busting into the wheel, trying to find the people who got off of this freighter. So as they're like going through and starting to basically lock this place down, we cut away to our other primary antagonist in this storyline.
Oh, and this guy is so 70s. I mean, the collar, man. He's reaching a Doctor Strange or Adam Warlock level of collar here.
He might as well have Ming the Merciless on speed dial as his fashion consultant.
He really is in that vein. And he's here watching, what is this, some kind of hollow feed of the gladiator pits? Because, yeah, there are gladiator pits on this place.
Oh, 100%. And, yeah, pretty soon in the next couple of issues, we'll get into just how messed up the gladiator pits are. But we are introduced to Senator Grayshade, who is the administrator on the wheel.
Wait a minute. Is he some sort of, I don't know, morally dubious character named Grayshade? Is that what you're saying?
You might even say, yeah.
It's almost
someone named Grayshade maybe splits the difference between difficult moralities in a galaxy at war.
This is where this is pretty lazy.
Yeah.
You guys couldn't have taken another look at that. Nope.
Well, look, when you have a space Nazi named Strom, which is like one letter flop away from Storm.
I mean, when I first read it, I went, Storm. I went, oh, I see what they've done here. But just upon like the first glance, I thought his name was Storm. I'm like, boy, that's pretty. Oh, okay. All right. I guess you got me on a technicality marvel.
But yeah, Grayshade is like, okay, if you know anything about literary symbolism, this is so on the nose, it's not even funny.
It's almost like he exists in shades of gray.
Yeah, almost.
Once again, I like the character. The name is dumb, but I do like the guy who's just like, I play the game of the, I give the Empire what they need, and they'll just leave me alone to do my own nefarious shit.
Yeah. And we are also introduced to his robot sidekick, which is something straight out of Metropolis.
Very much so.
An entity known as Mastercom.
Yeah, he's cool. I like him.
Yeah, we'll get into him and his weird computer nipples here on the next page, because he has got...
Beep, boop, boop.
I don't know how they're coding this character. I really don't, because he is a droid, but he is also the master computer of the wheel. And to do anything like technical, he has to salaciously touch his finely molded metal pecs as though he is caressing his own robot nipples. It's weird.
Done, sir. He's on his cruiser at the Imperial Dock. That's the stuff.
And his face is molded like he has this like kind of hedonism bot expression on his face.
I just imagine just in the back you see him going,
oh yes.
That's the stuff. Hey, Gray Shade, is there anything you need me to look up?
Any systems I can access?
Yeah. How'd I end up with the pervy robot?
Oh, you know he built the pervy robot.
It's great. He's gonna be a total perv. I thought it would be funny. Now it's weird.
So we get some info from Mastercom that the unregistered ship has landed in the wheel and that fugitives have fled, and then stormtroopers have followed them in. So we get this conversation between Gray Shade and Strom where they're just like, what the hell are you doing on the wheel? And I like Strom's rejoinder here, which is just to kill rebels.
Yeah. What am I always trying to do? Kill some rebels. My rebel kill quotient is down. I'm
Near
not
the end of the
meeting
month,
quotas.
I gotta get my quota in.
Yeah. You know I'm trying to get that bonus. If I do like the idea of the commander who kills the most rebels gets a bonus.
We work on commission.
Yeah. Please tell me it's not another Dave and Buster's gift card.
Oh, Olive Garden. You know when you're there, your family.
Unlimited breadsticks, you're saying?
Unlimited breadsticks.
That's right. That was a mandate. You shall have unlimited breadsticks. Oh, okay. Well, not all of his policies are terrible.
Yeah, thanks, Chief Palpatine.
Oh, old Sheev. He and I go way back. Old Sheev. So I do
but
like
yes,
his.
This is where we get the explanation that, like, look, the Empire's always left the wheel alone because the wheel gives the Empire a ton of kickbacks.
Yeah, totally, man. Like, I mean, it's. I do like this also as well, where it's like, yeah, we're like, it's any kind of gambling thing, right? Where it's just like, yeah, we're taking desperate people's money, and you're getting a cut of that. So it's yet another way that they're like screwing the people of Star Wars.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. But at the same time, Strom is like, don't care, must kill rebels.
Well, and I like his suggestion about, like, maybe just wait for them to leave here and then kill them. No.
Yeah, Strom comes back. Perhaps you'll change your song, Gray Shade, when you learn these rebels plundered and destroyed a House of Tag merchant ship, one delivering a wheel profit to your inner system's bank.
Man, on the next page here, there's a real Lex Luthor-y, like, look on Straw.
Did it real good. Though he's also got some Dune eyebrows going on, which is...
Oh, yeah. This guy is just, he wishes he was in House Harkonnen.
Oh, yeah, 100%. This is like one of the Baron's great nephews that we don't ever hear about.
He's got that vibe for sure. Mm-hmm. So yes,
Gray Shade comes back with just like, well, why didn't you say so? If these rebels destroyed my money, go ahead, go kill them.
Whoa! They kept money out of my pocket. Fuck them.
And of course, this is Strom lying and saying like, yeah, well, it's the rebels who destroyed all of your profits.
That's where that happened. Yeah, bastards. Am I right?
Mm-hmm. I also do love.
Right.
Here, Gray Shade says, like, okay, look, I want one alive for questioning. And Strom, like, ends the communication with Gray Shade, turns to his officers and says, like, okay, get our troopers out there, but see that the transmissions is garbled, particularly that business about one alive for questioning. That's some good evil right there.
That's good evil. Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad villainy.
Yeah. So we've got this whole like web of machinations set up at the beginning of this story where it's like, okay, our antagonists are chasing the rebels, but they're also trying to screw each other over, and the rebels have all split up. Like, this is the start of a good story.
I will say that is like the I'm surprised at the fact that there's like one level deeper of villains with separate machinations against each other. It's like, wow, we haven't seen that kind of. That's not like incredibly sophisticated, but for 70s Star Wars comics, it's very sophisticated.
I mean, look, we wouldn't even get to that in the movies until Return of the Jedi.
Yeah, this is true. So, meanwhile, 3PO is carrying Luke.
Yeah.
And then it's like running away with him.
how fast do you think 3PO could move under the weight of a full-grown human?
I mean, without carrying anything, he's pretty slow. Would you ever see him do anything but like a light shuffle? I mean, really, you know?
You don't remember that deleted scene where 3PO was pole vaulting in Empire?
A little known fact, R2, I used to run track.
R2 would actually be great at the discus. He just get his little gripper arm and then he spin his body around a lot and
yeah. Oh man, can I just get, by the way, here's another pitch. Just give me like an animated short Droid Olympics. I'm there for it, man.
So there was an old game by LucasArts back in the day for the PC called Droids, where you were literally just building droids to do like Rube Goldbergian tasks.
I kind of remember that, yeah.
It was basically the Droid Olympics, and I spent so many hours in that game.
I never had it. I just remember it existing. But yeah, that all the droid stuff is crazy. The droid cartoons and stuff.
Oh, we'll get to the droid comic here, John. That's, that is something that is in the pipeline.
And so there. This like also the like quick head turn on 3PO is so interesting. Where he's like, "What?"
Yeah, because R2 has jacked into the systems and they're looking for the hospital. But it turns out the stormtroopers are here with the tiniest gun you could have on a stormtrooper.
I keep telling you, I lost my main gun. It's a backup.
And he's holding it weird and like his elbows crooked and just like you don't hold guns like that.
Not to plug our Patreon content, but if you do listen to our Vincent Price show, we talk about how ill-fitting a gun is in the hand of Vincent Price, and it always looks like this, where he's always just like, "Let me aim this pistol here. There it is." It's just like, yeah. You're like a poisoner. That's like a Vincent Price killing. And he does give the order to vaporize them.
Yeah, on the last page here, we get a weird-looking stormtrooper saying, "Vaporize them."
Real weird-looking stormtrooper, weird-looking helmet, and weird little, like, point back. Vaporize them, those two over there.
There was over-the-shoulder pointing, those two.
Yeah. Did you catch it? Do you need me to point more clearly? Yeah, we got it. And
we cut back to Gray Shade being and Mastercom being like, "Shall I intercede in any way, Senator Gray Shade?" Because they're watching all of this on comms.
Baby, please ask me to intercede.
Gray Shade, for 2 droids and an apparently dying boy, not worth the effort, Mastercom. But look at this other rebel we've got elsewhere in the station.
Check out this hottie. Am I right?
Yeah, okay. This is where we get into why Gray Shade gets real gross real quick. Because Mastercom asked, "You recognize her, sir?" And Gray Shade comes back.
I do indeed, Mastercom. Princess Leia Organa. Loveliest of my adversaries in the Senate. Yes, I rank the senators by hotness.
He would.
Yeah. And so he's
that's something we didn't actually bring up in this comic, is like they keep calling him Senator Grayshade, which apparently implies that like he was a senator for just this huge gambling den and they had their own representation in the Imperial Senate.
Yeah. Or I feel like he's also one of those guys who was in the Senate briefly but makes everyone still call him senator.
I mean, he specifically says that in this book. We skipped over it, but like they address the fact that the Empire has dissolved the Senate, but this guy insists that everyone still call him senator.
I'm fascinated by that. People do that, like in real life. You see that where people are like, it's like that guy was a senator 20 years ago. It's like, nope, once a senator, always a senator. I'm like, oh, come on.
Right. No, this
I
guy's
believe
just
it's senator.
We get this guy perving on Leia a little bit, and that's the end of this issue, because the next issue is the ultimate gamble.
I will always say they often overstate the titles of those.
Just a little, John, just a little.
Yeah, they really always, it's just like, I think this is pretty good, but still it's like the ultimate gamble. All right. So yeah, that was issue 18, man. I mean, yeah, pretty good for the most part. Some weird art choices.
This is the most promising start to a story arc we've had thus far in this comic book run.
Yes, indeed.
It doesn't feel too Flash Gordon-y. It feels very like grounded in the Star Wars that we know. And again, even despite the fact that they're really only working with like shooting scripts and maybe some of the world Bible stuff that Lucas had laid down, and
Right.
like the fact that this is like already solidifying, it's just like I could absolutely see this being a expanded universe like novel or something that would come 20 years later and easily slot in.
It is sad that we are so happy that it's just like, oh, it just seems like a Star Wars story. The fact that it feels like Star Wars is such faint praise, but we haven't really had that.
This isn't Magnificent Seven with Godzilla at the end. This isn't
Right.
Waterworld with the weird plesiosaur riders. Like, we're firmly back in Star Wars. And the fact
it's
that we
actually-
can...
Seems like it's, you're like, smells like a Star Wars story.
Quacks like a Star Wars story. Walks like a Star Wars story.
It did walk like a Star Wars story distinctly. Well, yeah. So
Look, there's still plenty of time for this to go absolutely off the rails.
Oh God, yeah, man. If there's one thing we know, they can tank any good idea in this comic.
I look forward to finding out that Commander Strom is like a werewolf or something.
You know what? Actually, that would make that better, though. So I actually kind of hope that happens.
No,
So,
under
yeah.
the light of the full moon out in space.
Hey, I'm still waiting for the cyborg guy who tore his face off to come back. So you know,
Oh, Valance. We'll get more of Valance, I'm sure.
Oh, I know we will, but I just, oh God, I want it. I want that. So yeah, that's issue 18. Of course, we want to point people towards the patron page. Mm-hmm. Patron.podbean.com/punchup, where you can get cool exclusive bonus content from all of our shows here on the Punch Up Entertainment Network.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to some of the stuff we've got in the pipeline for that. We have all sorts of stuff over on the Patreon page that helps support all of the shows on the Punch Up Entertainment Network, including the one you're listening to right now, as well as Campbell and Jones Meet the Monsters, Material Components, the Action Shelf, all that good content.
That's right. And of course, as always, if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, because that really helps. Gregani, what should people? We want to let people know what. We certainly always want people to chime in about their thoughts about the comics.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on the Imperial Senate and how it was dissolved by the Empire in a unilateral move to consolidate power? Do you think it's fair that people who were senators not even 6 months ago can still call themselves senators despite the dissolution of this galactic government? I would say no, but I leave it to you, our capable listeners, in the comments below.
Let's have a very respectful debate about politics.
Yeah.
Nothing bad will happen.
In YouTube comments.
Space politics. Yeah, so that I think though that's going to do it for this episode.
Yes, absolutely. And as always, I have been Mike Gergoni.
I'm John Campbell.
And please, may the panel be with you.